and a very warm welcome to Bharata First. You're watching UPSC Corner with me, Pereira. First, let me inform you about Bharata First Knowledge Center, an initiative that will help each one of you and transform the way you learn. We had our first international relations class on Thursday, and it has had a phenomenal response. All those who have been a part of it have had a great time. You too can be a part of this incredible journey. Go to our website kc.bharatafirst.com for more details. Register now. This is the last chance to avail the limited period early bird discounts. Now, since you're here, I would like to thank you for your continued support. For those of you who haven't already subscribed, please like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and then all notifications. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team runs a daily big picture quiz. Please do participate by going through the description in big picture videos. Here are the UPI IDs for those of you who would like to come forward and contribute. A small contribution that you make will be a giant leap for us to keep bringing you this content. All this information along with some must-see recommendations are in the description of the video. Please go through it. Well then, I have a special guest on the program today. He is someone that I met 5 years ago on the sets of Rajya Sabha TV. Since then, he has taken on the role of a mentor and a well-wisher. Ever so ready to be of any help, a thorough gentleman with a heart of gold. It is a pleasure to welcome on UPSC Corner, Sajjanhar, former ambassador and retired Indian Foreign Services officer. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for being here. And let's talk about your journey today. It's going to be exciting and waiting to hear it from your mouth.
Well, thank you very much, Frank. Thank you for this very generous and gracious introduction. As always, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's take a walk down memory lane, Ambassador. Take you back a few decades because it's been a while, right? So what made you think of a career in in the Indian civil service? What made you think of writing the UPSC exams? Was there a motivation? Was there a mentor? How did it all begin?
Well, actually, several decades. Actually, if one could be more precise, about half a century, so to say, and that's a long time, really. So, okay, when I was getting out of school and getting into college, then I think I wanted to go into science. I wanted to do physics, wanted to do research. And that is what, I came from a small town close to Delhi, that is by the name of Meerut. And from school, I came to college here in Delhi, St. Stephen's College. And I thought I'll do physics. That's what I did. I did my graduation, undergraduation, and then post-graduation in physics. Also enrolled for the MPhil and PhD. So after spending 3 years at what we call the residence in college, I moved over to Guyer Hall, which was for postgraduate and postdoctoral research students. But when I was in post-graduation, I found that the facilities that were required in the college, in the university in India, were not really adequate for conducting serious cutting edge research in this area. So I started looking at other possibilities, and of course, when you join St. Stephen's at that time, we had a huge representation going into the civil services, foreign service particularly, and also the other civil services. So I think it became quite natural that I would go in for also write the exams for civil services. I did that, but before the results of the exams were out, I had already joined one of the major public sector banks, and I was in Bombay at that time. And when the interview call came, that was the time in 1974, because I had done my graduation, post-graduation up to 73. And in 74, I was undergoing training at this bank headquarters in Mumbai. And that was the time when Mr. George Fernandez had called for a train strike. And there was no way that I could come for the interview to Delhi. So I continued with my bank job It was a good job. It was a decent job, and I got promotions fairly quickly. But when it happened, and I was, within 2 or 3 years, I was made in charge of a branch, and I was posted in Amritsar. But then, when emergency was lifted in 1977, the working conditions in banks became very, very difficult. And that was the time that I decided to appear again for the civil services. I appeared, and that was it, Frank.
Absolutely. Such an interesting journey. I mean, you take a break and then you come back and then you crack it again, and why you missed the interview in the first place as well. There's so much that happens, isn't it, Ambassador? So, do you remember what was said, what was asked of you, what kind of questions you got from the board? Was it a cordial board? What exactly was that process like?
Well, that's the interview. But before that, maybe I could also share with you, because I don't know whether I mentioned, I did. Yeah, I did physics. I did my post graduation in physics. So
Hmm.
when there were students who were going in for the exams for my first trial in 1973, when I appeared, all my papers were physics and chemistry and maths, because they are scoring papers. But when, after an interregnum of about 3 or 4 years, in 1977, I decided to again appear. I saw that all the youngsters who were coming out, because they were coming out 3 or 4 years after me, that all this knowledge of physics, whether it is Heisenberg's principle, Schrodinger's equation, it would be on their fingertips. And I had lost touch with all of that. So I decided to take up subjects that were which were far removed from what I had studied in college and in university, and subjects that I was really interested in, and I had, on my own as a hobby, I had invested time and effort and energy, and that was basically history. And I had, meaning I was interested in traveling around India on my own during college years. I was also, a National Science Talent Scholar. So every summer we used to go to different places. I was in IIT Mumbai, IIT Madras, different places, BITS Pilani. So I was interested in history, both Indian history and European history, reading about Napoleon, reading about Bismarck, reading about Rommel, all the others. So I decided to take some history papers, and at that time we used to have three lower and two higher, level postgraduate level papers. So I took subjects like, I think, European history, Indian history, and British constitutional history. And one of the higher subjects that I took, in addition to British constitutional, was jurisprudence, because I thought that is a conceptual subject. I would not really have to remember, I would not have to, memorize many facts or details, but I would be able to reason out and, study it accordingly. So my subjects, again, if I remember correctly, jurisprudence and British constitutional in higher, and sociology and Indian history, and one paper was physics. So these were the papers that I took. And as far as the uh, interview was concerned, yes, I think it was a very cordial, very welcoming interview board. They really make you feel at ease. I had already worked for about 3 4 years in a bank, and then at that time I was in a reasonably uh, senior position. I was heading a small branch of the bank in Amritsar. So it was good, but they asked me about freedom struggle, and I still remember one of the members of the interview board. I think he was from the defense services. He asked me that, he said, and just then it had the assassination of Sheikh Mujib had taken place in Bangladesh, and he asked me that countries in our neighborhood, they got independence along with us, but most of them have gone into dictatorship or military dominated autocracies and authoritarian systems in Asia and in Africa. So why has India not done that? And why do you think? And he banged the table and he said, why do you think that India will never go down that path? Of course, it was, we had just seen the end of the emergency, and that was one of the reasons why, things, in fact, had become so very bad, because whatever the other problems with emergency might have been, and there were several of them, but discipline used to be there and punctuality used to be there, and in banks and in government offices. So I, responded as to what was the nature of our leadership after the independence, and what Mahatma Gandhi, that he had made it a mass movement. It was not really an independence struggle that had come from the top. It was a mass movement, and how also the diversity in India, and the diversity in India had been living, all, whether it is religion, or it is ethnicities, or different thoughts, ideas, views, how everyone was living at peace with each other. And that was the reason, in my view, that we had not gone down the dictatorial way, and why, in my view, again, going forward, we'd be able to, through dialogue, we would be able to arrive at positions where we would not give full authority to any single individual or community or anything of that sort. So I think it was very comfortable. They want to make you feel at ease, and then they have a good 40-45 minute discussion, and I came out reasonably assured after the interview.
So, Ambassador, was IFS your first choice, or was it something that just happened? And how has that journey been? I mean, what was it like when you got selected into the service, and what was the first initial feeling? What went through your mind, and what went through your heart as well?
Oh, well, I was doing reasonably well, if one would put it in that sense, in life. At that time, staff officer in a bank. It was not a bad uh, job, so to say. But yes, foreign service was my first choice, and I was very, very keen because, as I mentioned, history, culture, different societies. I mean, that is something that has always interested me. And even though while in school and college, I didn't have an opportunity to travel out, like I think youngsters these days can go. But I was always interested in that. And of course, the honor and the privilege of speaking on behalf of your country, representing your country, that was a great motivating factor. All that had really come from the time in college, because as I said, when I was in college, about maybe half, if not more, of the college was appearing for the civil services exams. So yes, that was my first choice, and I was lucky to be, third or fourth in the All India merit list, both for the Foreign Service, IAS, etc., etc. And of course, needless to say, I have never regretted it. I have loved each and every minute that I have been in the service, and the service has given me so much and given me an opportunity to give back to the country so much. So yes, it was my first choice.
Absolutely. So, what was your first posting, Ambassador? Do you remember it? Where was it? Which country, and how was that?
Oh, I remember it very well. In our, I don't know whether you have interviewed in this group anyone from the Indian Foreign Service, but the way in which it used to be done, I don't know how it is. It might have changed now. Is that we were about 18, 20 of us, and there would be the requirement as to what are the languages that the ministry needs, that our officers, we have what is called a CFL, a compulsory foreign language that we have to choose. So it used to be, so to say, by lots. So number one at the top, she or he would select a particular language, then number two would select a language. So as I said, I was number three or four. So it was very easy for me. I wanted Russian. Again, not because I had any great understanding or appreciation as to what it would involve, but basically our best friend at that time was the Soviet Union. And no one had really expected or anticipated that Soviet Union is going to crumble, and it is within a matter of 10, 15 years. So Russian was my CFL. That's what I chose. We did, an initial training here in India at the Masuri Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy, a little bit of training in India, about 1.5 years. And that was also memorable because, it really helps you to connect with the people from your own service and different services. And then I went to Moscow. I still remember it was the 4th of October 1980 when we landed in Moscow. I just then got married in July of that year. So both my wife and I, we went there. And it was cold. It was, in fact, the first time I was traveling out of the country. So it was, totally didn't know what to expect. But it was a phenomenal experience, because going into the Soviet Union, we'd heard and read so much about it, from the Time, from the Newsweek, from the Economist, as to, what terrible condition the Soviets are in as far as their living standards are concerned, as far as their freedoms are concerned. But what we found there was totally different from what we had read, what we had been tutored so far. And so it was a revelation. And of course, India was one country, a non-communist country, the only non-communist country that the Soviet Union was in contact with. And India truly was the flavor of the Soviets. India was at people to people level, of course, at official and government level, there were our own relations and linkages. And that was the time that first we had, the Janta government. And then after that, we had Mrs. Gandhi who came to power. And so the personal rapport also that was enjoyed between Mrs. Gandhi and President Brezhnev at that time, it started with that. And of course, we went into the other leaders. So yes, that was a very formative first posting, and very, very interesting, and had left a very strong imprint on my mind, on the mind of my wife also. And we still continue to have very many good friends, close friends in Russia, although there have been so many changes after that.
Absolutely. Ambassador, what has been the most challenging assignment or most challenging part of the job?
Well, that's a difficult question because, I think, well, I could say, my second tenure was Tehran. And Tehran, there was war going on at that time between Iran and Iraq. We had, Iraqi aircrafts coming and bombing Tehran virtually every night. People used to go out, the Iranians used to drive out in the evenings and go out of the cities, because they knew that, it was known as the War of the Cities. So, one could say that that was a difficult time, but I don't take it as difficult. I think it was very interesting, very exciting, very informative, and it really helped you to establish very strong bonds and connect with the local people. And again, even in Tehran, although our posting there was from 1982 to 85, we still continue to have good friends from there. I was recently, just before the pandemic last year in February 2020, I had gone to Iran, to Tehran, for an official visit. And I still have good friends, and although we might not be meeting, but it was really wonderful. So, one could call it that physically some of that was not very comfortable. But I think one has to be both physically and emotionally and psychologically willing to adjust and adapt to the different circumstances. That is very important. And you might go to, we went to Dhaka also in between, and one could say, that the living conditions were not as good, even as far as the government there was concerned. It was not a particularly pro-Indian government. It was Begum Zia who was at the helm of affairs. But still, what the challenge is that you have to find opportunities as to what can you do, what is your role, what is your responsibility, and how can you find you know different areas, different fields where you can you can advance the objective of strengthening ties between the countries, going and having more people to people, stronger people to people connect. So I think in that sense, challenging there have been, but otherwise, I would say that whether it was Iran at that time, or Dhaka, or Geneva, or Bangkok, I have the fondest memories of all these places, and I don't think we ever took anything as being difficult or complaining, or basically to see what is it that you can how is it that you can make the best out of it, rather than sort of thinking about that something could be different, something could change, something could be better. Frank.
Ambassador, we spoke about, well, some challenges and probably the kind of bent of mind you need to take up a job like this, because it's not easy. You have to keep traveling every now and then. The family also has to travel, so there's not one place where you can actually settle down and call home. You're basically living like nomads, if I could say that. But what are some of the highs, really high points of your diplomatic career?
I think this also, what you mentioned, Frank, that you're moving from one place to the other and you are as a nomad. I think that also is a phenomenal experience. How many people would get the opportunity of, undergoing such an experience? But the highs are, of course, if you are mentally, awake to the fact that you have to move, it doesn't come as a shock after about 3 years, 4 years. Meaning, we were in Geneva for 4 years. Otherwise, most of the time, I've had a regular tenure of about 3.5 years in all the postings, except Washington, when I wanted to come out of there a little quicker, because my our daughter was to go to school and college, and we wanted that, for that to be in Europe. And the ministry is always very, very accommodating to the extent possible. So the opportunity of going and living in different places, observing their culture, their history, their evolution, getting to know them, and still being, a bystander. So I think it is such an enriching experience. It's such a glorious experience. And if, in addition to that, as you are sort of, assimilating and absorbing all that you have a role to play in terms of advancing your country's interests. And, I have been fortunate that it was not only in bilateral assignments like Washington and Tehran and Dhaka, but also in multilateral assignments, because I was in Geneva negotiating for India in the multilateral trade negotiations, the Uruguay round. When I was in Bangkok, then we were negotiating for the India ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, India Thailand Free Trade Agreement. When I was in Brussels, we were negotiating for the India EU Bilateral Trade and Investment Agreement. So which very recently at the summit that the EU plus 27 summit that took place on the 8th of May, we decided, the two sides decided that we should have separate agreements on trade, investment, and geographical indications. So I think all this bilateral work is different, is very satisfying. You see results. The multilateral work has its own benefits, and in addition to that, you get to so much, know so much, experience so much, and develop very strong linkages and associations and also friendships. So I think there is a great deal of advantage and positives that I find in all that you do. And you are outside, and then you come back to India and partake of the development of the new growth story that is taking place in India, and that I think is phenomenal. No other service will give you that experience that the Foreign Service does.
Absolutely. And Ambassador, what tips, what advice would you like to give to anyone who would like to follow in your footsteps? Because I know there are lakhs of aspirants who write exams and who aspire to be in the Indian civil services. So anyone who likes to follow in your footsteps, what advice would you like to give them?
You know, the first thing, of course, is, and I'm sure this is no great secret I am sharing, that there is no substitute to hard work. Application. You know, I remember that when I had come, or even when I was in college, and I was in residence at St. Stephen's College, and you know, on one of the walls, just across my bed, as soon as I used to get up, I had written something in bold letters in hand, and I had stuck it there, and it went something like, you know, you might not be a genius, but hard work is a good substitute for it. So however talented you might be, there is no substitute to hard work. That is number one. Number two, I would say, is that, and that is true not only of the Indian Foreign Service, but I'm sure of other, whether it is civil services or otherwise, generally in life, that you have to make the best, the most of whichever position you are in. You know, if we spend time in complaining that this could change, this could have been better, I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't think you'll be able to, you know, really realize your fullest potential. If you see what is, you know, like there is a saying, and I think it comes from some of the scriptures, bloom where you are planted. So wherever you are, you know, whatever you can do. And in that context, I think particularly as far as the Foreign Service is concerned, you know, you should be willing to take initiatives. There are the government and the ministry in many cases leaves you to your own devices, particularly, you know, when you are an ambassador, but not only when you are an ambassador. Many other cases, the ministry is very happy, very welcoming in terms of the officers taking initiative. So taking initiative, I think being a good listener, again, this is not only for the Foreign Service, but particularly in the Foreign Service, because, you know, when you are negotiating, when you are talking about advancing your interests, then you have to realize that it should be a win-win situation for both sides. So it is not that, you know, like it is said, that the best result of a negotiation is when all sides go away from the table equally disappointed. Because, you know, it is not that only one country should, or one set of individuals should be able to get all that they need, all that they want, what is their negotiating position. But everyone should be willing, should have got something, and maybe not the everything that they had demanded. So I think a good listener, humility, willing to you know, go into the step into the shoes of other people so that you can understand their interest, their concerns, their anxieties, and come to a situation which is middle of the road, so that you have gained something and the others have also gained. And I think this is something that even in the country we need to understand, because when we are negotiating with something and they said we had set out to do this and we have not been able to achieve this, but I think we need to see as to what the other countries have also moved very significantly from their positions. So I would say hard work, focus, and of course, building your character to be able to withstand the problems, the difficulties. But otherwise, if anyone is thinking of joining the foreign service, I can say that in my view, there is no better service, because not only does it give you a great opportunity for personal development, but I think there can be no greater uh, pride or satisfaction or reward when you represent your country, and represent your country in a significant manner. I don't mean about protocol that you're hosting your National Day receptions and people are coming, or you on your anything to do with the protocol or the honor that you get. But basically, and this is true in multilateral settings, when you're in the WTO or when you are negotiating with EU, and you have the flag of your country in front of you, and whatever you say, you are really speaking for the to promote the interests of 1.35 billion people of the country. So in that sense, the responsibility is also huge. So it's a very, very rewarding career. So anyone who's interested, they should definitely give it a shot. Both, as far as I know, the structure of the exams and of the interview has changed, but still, I think there's no better way than to get it through hard work. I remember there was an anecdote that I had heard. One of the very successful athletes, he went around to a school, and one of the young boys, he accosted him and he congratulated him, and he said, "Oh, fantastic! You've done so work. I'm so proud. You are such a lucky man. Whatever you do, you are successful in that." So this athlete, he thinks a little and he says, "Yes, I think you're very right. I'm indeed very lucky. But I've realized through my life that the harder I work, the luckier I get." So I think no substitute to hard work.
Absolutely, absolutely. Ambassador, thank you so very much for your words of wisdom. They mean a lot, and I'm sure it will go a long way as far as those who are watching as well is concerned, because these words of wisdom and words of experience can also be never replaced, because there's no replacement for experience as well and for knowledge. And that is something that you have. And thank you for imparting that on us and on all the viewers. A pleasure having you on UPSC Corner.
Thank you very much, Frank. Thank you for this invitation. I have enjoyed our conversation as always, and I wish all your listeners the very best. And I'm sure listening to watching your programs will help them a great deal in achieving their objectives. So, all the very best.
Before I go, let me inform you about Bharata First Knowledge Center, an initiative that will help each one of you and transform the way you learn. We had our first international relations class on Thursday, and it has had a phenomenal response. All those who have been a part of it have had a great time. You too can be a part of this incredible journey. Go to our website kc.bharatafirst.com for more details. Register now. This is the last chance to avail the limited period early bird discounts. Thank you once again for your continued support. Those of you who haven't already subscribed, please like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and then all notifications. You can subscribe to our newsletter as well to get some incisive content. The Bharata First team runs a daily big picture quiz. Please do participate by going through the description in big picture videos. Here are the UPI IDs for those of you who would like to come forward and contribute. A small contribution that you make will be a giant leap for us to keep bringing you this content. All this information, along with some must-see recommendations, are in the description of the video. Please go through it. That's it from me. See you again next time.